Hello, everybody. I want to welcome you back to the Dynamic Decisions podcast, where we explore the strategies that drive successful decision making in the world of business. Why? Because the best decisions come from great conversations. I'm your host, Tisha Cable, CEO of C Model Data, and today we have a true leader in technology, data science, and innovation. His name is Daniel. He's the co-founder and CTO at April, getapril.com. His career is a testament to technological excellence. He brings a strong background in data science, analytics, big data engineering, and technology leadership in general. Daniel, I am so happy to have you here. I'd love to learn more about you, more about April or Get April. Let us know what's going on in your world.
Yeah, so happy to be here. Thank you, Tisha. And hard to follow that kind of intro, but I'll do my best. I'm Daniel, and I'm the co-founder of April. And what we do is April is that we build the most connected tax software out there. So basically, our goal with what we build is to try and help people like yourself and myself save time and money by taking care of everything that has to do with taxes for them. So
Okay.
that's
So
really
number one, before
everything.
I'm
Yeah.
going to let you keep going, but I got to tell you, I just had like a mind blowing moment just now because I just picked up April. I just got it. April is tax.
Yeah,
Let's go,
exactly. You got it.
creativity. Okay,
You
keep
got
going,
it.
keep going, keep talking.
Coincidentally, though, I don't know if it's a coincidence or it was meant to be, but my wedding anniversary is April 15th, which is tax day. Maybe it's just life. I don't know. Anyhow,
Taxes are your life.
yeah, exactly. So we're basically building everything that starts from tax planning, tax optimization into actually tax filing and helping individuals, households, and even small businesses take care of everything that has to do with taxes. So that's us. And there's a lot of technology behind the scenes, a lot of AI, optimization, personalization in order to make everything as frictionless and as easy as possible.
That is fantastic. So let's dig in. I've got some questions for you.
Let's do it.
So the tax technology space right now faces a bunch of unique challenges, right? So consumers actively avoid thinking about taxes until we're forced to because we don't like those. But the regulations are really things that require year-round attention. So most fintech companies, they want this frictionless experience. They want to
Right.
hide all of the complexity, but taxes inherently involve decisions that people need to understand. So could you walk us through a moment when you had to choose between building elegant automation that obscures the tax logic versus creating transparency that might feel more complicated, but it helps users to understand their true financial obligations? Is there any like human costs when people trust systems that they don't understand?
Yeah,
Tell me a
yeah,
little bit about
it's a
your
great
view. Yeah.
question. I'd say that everything is tax is basically a very fine, delicate balance between trying to make things simple, while on the other hand, trying to keep them accurate and representing the actual law and the truth and giving people all of the information that they need in order to make a proper decision, which might sometimes be overwhelming, especially if you're talking to people with tax terminology that's not often as easy to understand. So we've took some opinionated approaches in April in simplifying everything that we can for the users while still keeping them engaged and keeping things accurate and presenting full information for them. Now, the way that we balance this trade-off is with really extreme personalization. So we basically, every single point of time, every single question that Tisha answers in the tax interview that we give her, at real time, we personalize your interview. So whenever we learn something about you, we don't just give you a one-size-fits-all interview and 1,000 more questions, but we trim down everything that's not relevant for you anymore. And we still show you everything that might be applicable for you. And as we learn more, we fine tune it more and more until you get basically the minimal amount of questions. And you can see the results where in April, it takes around 10 to 20 minutes for someone to file their taxes. while in the competition out there, reported statistics are 5 to 9 hours. So by personalizing aggressively, you can see that you can get dramatically better results and a lot of simplification while still keeping true to the law and keeping everything 100% accurate, not playing with accuracy at all.
So one of the things you just mentioned it. You talked about accuracy. You built systems at Google scale where
Mhm.
milliseconds matter. You worked in IDF cyber defense where accuracy is existential. Tech sits at this strange intersex.
Yep.
Errors can be catastrophic, but users expect consumer grade speed and simplicity when they're using these kinds of tools. So when you're architecting April's platform, how do you navigate the tension between the rigorous validation cycles that prevent costly mistakes versus the rapid iteration culture that wins in consumer
Mhm.
fintech? Have you faced any pressure to like ship faster when your engineering judgment said that the system isn't yet bulletproof?
Yeah, definitely. There's always the pressure of a startup to ship as fast as possible, get things to production, try and test things live on real users. But in a case like tax, where we actually internally compare ourselves to working at a company like NASA, you cannot make mistakes. Okay.
Right.
We do not play around with people's money as much as NASA will not play around with security. And we take this very heavily that we need to get everything 100% accurate. So in order to do that, we invested heavily from day one in a system with many layers of guardrails where not only we do our internal testing, we also do external tests and validations directly with the IRS and with the state authorities, where every year we go through rigorous tests in order to have them sign off on our software as 100% accurate. And even more than that, we don't just trust that they validated that our system is correct. We have thousands more guardrails that are running either offline or online on users' text data as they type things through the system. So we
Mhm.
make sure there is nothing that even looks funny or like a weird number that shouldn't even be there, that's off scale. We run anomaly detection, things like that, and we alert the user in real time. Hey, this thing looks weird.
Yeah.
Are you sure that you meant to add this or that number here? So that's something that we really baked into the core of how we do things. And it's a core value in our culture that we care about the user's accuracy and we do not want to make mistakes with money.
Yeah. This is great. And then you've got to balance all of the changes. I mean, tax regulations, they change all the time. There's new
Right.
legislation, there's IRS guidance, updates, state level
Mhm.
variations. I mean, traditional software development most of the time, and I know this cuz my CTO complains all the time when I'm making changes. It assumes that you're going to have stable requirements. So tax technology like this, it does require this continuous adaptation to rules that you don't actually control. So when you're deciding between building flexible architectures that can adapt to regulatory changes versus optimizing for today's rules to ship faster and cheaper, because we know that that matters too. How do you justify the engineering investment like in future proofing when investors actually want to see customer traction right now? Are there any ways that you think about trade offs between maximizing current performance versus the path that ensures long term reliability of the platform?
Yeah, so when we started April, we understood that there's a huge problem in keeping the tax corpus basically up to date with continuously evolving law. And not just on the federal level, but every state and even large cities have their own laws that you need to keep updated with. Now, we know that the traditional industry like Intuit, H&R Blocks, and so on have hundreds of people doing simply that. Their software is done for decades now, and the hundreds of people just keep the law updated year over year. And we said, okay, as a startup with 10 people at the time, how can we possibly compete with something like that? It's unimaginable. So we came up with a way in day one that inherently in the system, it's able to adapt to continuously changing tax law. And we're doing that using large language models. So in the core of our system, the way that the tax knowledge is built in is that we automatically, using AI, read the tax law and translate it into actual code. Now, if you think about it, when tax law changes, you can simply run this process again and see, okay, here's the updated code out of the updated law and do this difference and matching, making things 100 times faster. So that's basically our secret sauce in our ability to scale with a fraction of the people of the competitors.
Look, I ain't mad at you because that's the way that it works now, right? It makes no sense not to use repeatable. This is to me the value of AI today is to do the repeatable mundane things like
Definitely.
reading tax law. It makes sense. But the other value is that it can read that tax law and then translate it for your users into a language that they actually
Exactly.
understand. So they don't have to be experts themselves
Mm.
because we can utilize AI to support in that translation into like layman's terms for some of us who, anything the legal documents and tax law is all written to be mysterious. So listen, this message is for our audience. Really quick, would you think about your own organization's data strategy and digital transformation efforts? What data driven decisions have created the most meaningful impact on your business outcomes? Share your experiences with us on LinkedIn and other social media using Dynamic Decisions Podcast. Okay, let's talk a little bit about your leadership. So, the best data science teams, they often push to solve problems elegantly, sophisticated models, comprehensive testing, architectural purity. But in a startup that's racing toward product market fit, perfect becomes the enemy of shipped. So you're leading engineers from Google's data culture where thoroughness was expected.
Right.
Now you're in an environment where every sprint matters just for your company's survival. How do you create space for your team to maintain quality standards, but also making sure that they understand the business reality that a good solution today beats a perfect solution in 6 months?
You're absolutely right. And it's a big shift for everyone coming from a corporate culture, including myself and a bunch of people I worked with who came along with me to April. We had to do a complete mind shift. And this mind shift basically starts, in my opinion, with culture. The culture that you instill in the company and the values that you hold and the processes and the way that you encourage people to operate. And culture starts by leading with example, in my opinion. So I try to do exactly the same. So we very much value decision over indecision at every single point in time. And more than that, we try to take for granted that we will have to make decisions with limited information. And we cannot take an infinite amount of time to find all accurate information. So given that we know that we have to make decisions and we have to make them with limited information, you can come up with your processes and frameworks for how to operate in such an ambiguous environment. And what I personally like to do, and I like to encourage my team to do, is to play a what if kind of scenario game
Yeah.
where you think of, okay, I have those few alternatives in order to make a decision. And I'm missing this data. But what will actually happen to my decision if I do get this piece of data? Will it actually change my opinion? And if I get this piece of data, let's say if users prefer X or Y, will users preferring X just, let's say, 60% over 40 will actually change any decision that I have? Or do I need to see something as significant as 99% of users saying something like this in order to make a decision go this way versus the other way? And oftentimes you find that with additional pieces of data, you're not necessarily going to change your decision. So we try to basically bake that process and this what if scenario game into our decision process and run faster. And there's all kind of creative ways in actually finding more data these days,
Right.
using surveys, using AI, using deep research to find some proxies and directional information that might not be 100% accurate, but
That's
is
right.
very much correlated with what you want to know. And that's oftentimes enough to make a decision.
So I'm going to ask another question before we go into my favorite segment. As you were talking about scenarios, I was like, "Ooh, my decision making persona test is going to be fun today." So here we go. So right now, though, you're translating between these very different stakeholder languages. You've got engineers thinking about data pipelines. This is to me the thing about in really technical project managers are the other folks who have to really be able to do this translation. So you got engineers who are thinking about data pipelines and model accuracy, product teams focused on user experience, compliance teams who are obsessed with regulatory risk, and you got partners evaluating your API performance. When these groups clash, perhaps engineers want to rebuild the core architecture, but sales is promising features to close deals. How do you mediate these competing timelines and priorities, particularly when the technically superior path would delay revenue that might keep the company alive?
Yeah, that's a very hard question. Every case has its own reasons for going this way or that way. But on a high level, we try to remain very faithful for our goals. And I wouldn't go as rigid as say OKRs, but basically the goals that we've defined for our company for the next year, for the next quarter. And this is the North Star. This is what we need to achieve. And every big decision, like, do we need to rebuild that entire system or do we ship another feature knowing it can only last for a year or 2 years and not for infinity, which there's no such thing as a feature that lasts for infinity in engineering. We try to weigh that in with the context of the goals in mind. Can we still achieve them? Would we be faster or slower to achieve them? And what's the cost of doing this versus that? And not only that, I'm trying to do it as a founder and as a technical leader, but we have all of those goals and all of the high level decisions and the roadmap of what we need to build, what we need to deliver to which client by what time. We have that publicly available across the company. So everyone can see this single source of truth and say, hey, you know what? This decision that Daniel, you want me to make here is actually going to make me not meet the deadlines that is most important for the company. So let's revisit that. And that's way better than, people being afraid to say something or things like that. So we're trying to make things publicly visible and encourage a culture where people align themselves to the targets.
Absolutely. So in order to get that alignment, you got to have transparency. I tell people all the time, transparency is the future. When we think about AI and all these things, some of the biggest outcomes are going to be related to how humans experience their work and what their requirements are. Transparency will be one of them. I mean, we've got a lot
Yep,
of information at our fingertips, so you might as well give me the right information and give me the good stuff so I can be more efficient
definitely.
at what I'm doing. That's really good. Okay, now we're going to explore your decision-making style through a persona assessment. So I'll ask you 4
So,
questions that represent different decision-making approaches. After each one, you're going to tell me how much it resonates with your actual process. And you're going to give it on a scale of 0 to 100%. Do you have a pen in hand?
yes.
Okay, because you need to write this down for me, okay?
No problem.
Well, not this part, but you'll write your answers down so you
Yeah.
can bring them back at the end. So you get a scale of 0 to 100% for each one, but you only get 100% for all 4.
Okay. Got it.
Okay? All
Yeah.
right, here's the first one. It's called the feeler. It's a values-driven leader. So this persona prioritizes alignment with core values and mission, often weighing the human impact and cultural fit of decisions alongside business metrics. So when considering a major product feature or partnership at April, I ask myself, beyond whether this generates revenue or we genuinely make taxes less painful, or are we just digitizing the same frustrating experience? Tax systems can be used to empower people to make better financial decisions, or they can be opacity engines that extract fees from those least able to afford them. If we optimize our algorithms to maximize completed filings without ensuring users understand their choices, we might be building a technically impressive system that ultimately harms the financially vulnerable. When a partner wants integration features that would drive their metrics but potentially steer users towards suboptimal tax decisions, how do I balance our company's survival against the risk that we're becoming a part of the financial services complexity that caused people to need us in the first place? Okay, Daniel, how much does approaching and questioning
Mm.
decisions like that sort of
Yeah,
resonate with your process?
it very much resonates. I don't know what the other criteria is yet, so I can't say exactly how much, but yeah, I'm a data person, but it very much resonates as I feel like when you're trying to build a product or a company, you have to look at things like an ecosystem and what's best for the business and what's best for the user, the human that's actually using the systems have to align in order for you to achieve success. So they can't be detached. They have to come together and you have to keep asking yourself these questions and whether what I'm doing actually makes Tisha's life better and have her be more engaged in a more fun way with her taxes. I know it's kind of a paradox to say fun and taxes in the same sentence, but
Right.
that's what we're trying to achieve here.
Yeah. So what do you give it?
I'd say 15% for now.
Okay.
Hmm.
Here you are, the planner, the strategic visionary. So this persona focuses on long-term implications and future-proofing decisions, always thinking several moves ahead and considering multiple scenarios. So when making architectural decisions about April's platform, I'm considering three divergent futures. In one scenario, AI advances to where tax preparation becomes fully automated, commoditizing basic compliance and making strategic tax planning our only differentiator. In another, regulatory complexity intensifies with states fragmenting tax rules further, where our ability to navigate multi jurisdiction compliance becomes the moat. In a third, blockchain based systems enable real time tax calculation at transaction levels, fundamentally disrupting the annual filing model we're built around. So each future requires different technical capabilities. The first rewards sophisticated planning algorithms. The second demands comprehensive regulatory coverage. The third requires rethinking our entire product architecture. Do I optimize for the scenario that I believe is most likely, or invest in flexibility that keeps options open but it makes us less competitive in any single future? How much does that scenario planning approach drive your strategic decisions?
That's a hard question because personally, Daniel loves to plan ahead and work on strategy. So, if it was my own fun backyard game, I would go up to like 50% in planning because that's what I like to do. But really, like in real life, in a startup, it's just not possible. You can't plan that much ahead. You have to see the feedback from the market, see how things align. You can make beautiful plans and they end up in the garbage can. So I'll take it as like, let's say 20%,
Okay, you got your 20% on there. How much do you have left?
65.
All right. And we're headed to the third one. This one is called the counter, the challenger of assumptions. So this persona naturally questions conventional wisdom and looks for contrarian opportunities, often finding success by zigging when others zag. So the tax industry assumes complexity requires expertise, that you need professionals to navigate the system. But what if that assumption primarily serves the credentialing cartel and perpetuates unnecessary confusion? April's thesis is somewhat contrarian. We believe technology can make tax genuinely comprehensible, not just faster to file. We're betting that intelligent automation combined with clear explanation beats the traditional model of opaque expertise. But every potential partner, whether banks, platforms, or advisors, has been conditioned to view tax as necessarily complex, making them skeptical of solutions claiming to simplify it. When deciding whether to emphasize our sophistication to seem credible or our simplicity to differentiate, How do I avoid the trap where being contrarian makes us seem naive about regulatory reality? Is there opportunity precisely because established players profit from complexity? Or am I rationalizing technical constraints into a market philosophy? Daniel, how much does that assumption challenging style influence your decision?
I love how you make it specific about April. That's really good. That really helps think of things properly. I'd say that 40% is counter, and I'd say that it's exactly why we've started the company, my partner and I, because we believe that there's a better way to do things, and we will not be held back by the way people used to do things. Not by regulation, but by what people are used to and the experience that they used to, and working with pen and paper and working with Excel sheets and getting 1,000 of questions that make zero sense. We believe that there's a better way to do it while still holding on to the exact same rigid regulation that the industry has. And then it's working out so far. 40% at least. Yeah.
All right. What do you have left?
25.
Okay, here we go. This one is called the data driver. It's an evidence-based decision maker. So this persona relies heavily on metrics, analytics, and concrete evidence to validate decisions, preferring proof over intuition. So before committing to product features or infrastructure investments, I ask myself, what does our data actually tell us versus what we want it to tell us? I want rigorous analysis distinguishing between metrics that look good, like API response times, calculation accuracy on test cases, user completion rates, and indicators predicting actual value. Did users make better financial decisions? Did they avoid costly mistakes? Did they feel more confident about their tax situation? Here's the paradox. The metrics that demonstrate technical competence, like system performance, feature adoption, integration success, or immediately measurable. But the outcomes that reveal whether we're actually helping people often take years to manifest and are nearly impossible to attribute cleanly. So, how do I balance the need for concrete performance data to guide engineering decisions against the reality that tax impact, avoiding audits, optimizing long-term financial health, reducing stress on people like Tisha, resists quantification until long after the product choices are locked? So, Daniel, tell me, how much does that evidence focused yet outcome aware approach guide your decisions?
It's definitely in there. It's not the biggest and it's not the smallest. So I'd say it's somewhere between 20 and 30. Given that I'm only left with 25, I'm pretty comfortable with that. I think data is important, but as we've said earlier, in a startup environment, things are changing. You have to make decisions fast. And often decisions are reversible. You don't have to keep them forever. You can experiment with things, even with limited amount of data, and then get more clarity when you experiment and not by doing offline research. So I'd say 25 makes sense.
That's great. Read them back to me. Tell me what we got.
We
What's our
have
filler?
feeler at 15, planner at 20, counter at 40, and data at 25.
Awesome. Congratulations. You
Thank
now
you.
have
Thank
a
you.
decision-making
Yes.
persona. No, thank you for doing that.
Yes.
That's always so much
I'll
fun.
hang
I
that
love
on
that
my wall
exercise.
in my office. This is
Yeah.
me.
Okay, so as we wrap up, I've got one final kind of question for you. So you have successfully led technology and data strategy from Google's massive scale to startup innovation at April. If you could give one piece of advice to leaders who are building data-driven products in highly regulated industries, what would that advice be?
Be explicit at exactly what you want to do and how you want to build. You don't have to religiously follow what you've set down at the beginning, but be explicit that these are my goals. These are the items that I want to build, and this or that person makes the decision.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Daniel, for sharing your
Thank
insights,
you.
sharing your expertise with us. I really do appreciate it. Would you share with our listeners where they can learn more about you and more about April?
Yeah, sure thing. At www.getapril.com, you can visit our website. You can visit the April LinkedIn page or my LinkedIn page. Happy to answer any question and keep the chat rolling with anyone interested.
And to our listeners, I want to thank you for tuning in. Remember, the best decisions come from great conversations. If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to subscribe it, rate it, share it with your network. Let's keep the conversation going on social media using Dynamic Decisions Podcast. And until next time, keep questioning, keep growing, and keep leading with purpose.